Hey, how's it going, guys? Frank with Tithely, coming to you with another episode of Modern Church Leader. Super excited about today's guest. It's Monday, 9 a.m. And I'm hearing feedback somewhere. So let me fix that. Okay, feedback on. Anyways, great to see you guys. I know there's always a bunch jumping on from YouTube and Facebook. So thanks for joining us this morning. Talking about kind of church online and specifically how to really grow kind of an online church and ministry using some of the tools out there like Zoom and others. So pumped about today's show. And without further ado, let me bring in our guest, Dan Duval. Hey, Dan, how's it going?
It's going real good. Thanks for having me.
It's good to have you all the way from Houston, visiting Houston today, but all the way from Houston.
That's right.
Yes. Why don't you tell us real quick, just a little bit about yourself, Bride Ministries, and we can then kind of jump right into kind of how you guys are doing church.
Yeah. So Bride Ministries is an interesting, I think, ministry for some. We began as an online outreach back in 2012. I had written a book, started a blog essentially, and in 2012 launched a podcast.
Okay.
And that was our ministry. In 2015, we transitioned to Texas and launched a church, an internet church in 2016. We called it the Fireplace Church initially. And we're going to be talking about that today. But that really brought into our outreach. As a ministry, we spend a lot of time focusing on getting people really engaged in their spiritual life, engaged with, deep, intimate relationship with God, and also ministering to survivors of deep trauma. So we have a lot of special resources, specialized tools, and so forth to help people get results in areas that are quite challenging to make progress in. And we are continuing to grow through today. Some of our future plans include survivor housing for trauma survivors.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, it's when we were chatting last week, and you kind of said it like you started off as an internet or an online based ministry, and that kind of grew into kind of online church, whereas most churches go the other way around, right? They kind of have a physical presence, they have a building, whether it's a building they own or they're renting or they're out of a middle school or something like that, and they have an add-on kind of online component. And obviously during COVID, everybody's got an online component to an extent, but you guys went the other way. So you were already online when COVID hit. But you were mentioning how you started early days, you kind of went online and, when we chatted, you're like, we got all the gear and we did all of this stuff. And then it was sort of like epic fail. Can you talk to us a little bit about like, what did you do to get ready? Like, what would that prep look like? What did you do? What did you buy? And then like, why was it such a failure at the beginning?
100%. Well, it was a real interesting story. Going back to 2014, I walked into a church and this pastor just like prophesied all this stuff over me. And it was like, all right, you're being released. You're called. You have an apostolic mantle, blah, blah, blah. In 2015 is when we really began to launch the Bride Ministries that you see today.
Yeah.
And as that developed, what I was led to do was start doing these online courses. So God was like, make these 8-week trainings. And I started with like 10 people. I just recruited random folks off of email list. And, we started with the subject of grace. And then I wrote another course called, we call it The Realm of Jesus Christ now, and then added on and on. Well, moving through 2015, as I was doing that, every time we did another round of these 8-week studies, more people would sign up. By the end of the year, going into 2016, we had literally well over 100 people engaged in these online courses for 8 weeks at a time. And what happened was those courses would start and people would be all shy and whatever. By the end of them, everyone's connecting and like, oh my gosh, I really enjoyed this. I got so much out of it. My life changed. I met people, blah, blah, blah. And by the way, why is it over? What are we going to do now? And, I just shrug my shoulders and say, I don't know what you're going to do. Sign up the next time.
Right. I'm working on the next. And how are you delivering them? This was
Oh
You're
gosh.
using Zoom or Google Hangouts or
Yeah.
pre-recording them?
We started with Google Hangouts. We went to WebEx. At one point, we tried any meeting. I mean, I basically went through all the different
Used them all.
products.
Okay. Yeah.
Eventually, we landed on Zoom because, in my opinion, it just worked a little better, had less glitches.
Right.
But yeah, we were just using internet software. And so then when we got to 2016, we said, hey, we're going to put together something, because our listening audience is literally all over the world. Like,
right.
We're not even limited to the US. We have people in Canada. We have people in Africa. We have people in Australia. We have people all over the map. And so in order to put a consistent community together, we're going to start an online church. I remember talking to people about this back in 2016. I said, we're going to do this. And I talked to pastors, and they looked at me like, that's not real church. It's just not real church.
Right.
There's no way that's going to work. And the unfortunate truth was that when we started it that way, ultimately the first iteration did not work.
Right.
And I'll tell you why. But man, it was really exciting getting started, and it was a faith walk. I said, we're going to do this, and this is what it's going to cost. At the time, our ministry, we really didn't have a lot of support. Like, I don't have large donors and people like institutional funding and, someone like, backing me with like, a really solid, like, I didn't have any of that. We just were a ministry, basically just taking goodwill offerings from random people.
Mm-hmm.
And so, it wasn't like we had lots of incoming, but I said, we're going to do this. And I knew we had a mandate from God to do it. And all the money came in. We were able to spend about $15,000 at the time, in 2016, on the equipment, which, there are $1 million ministries. They're like, 15,000. We raised that in one weekend.
That's a lot of money, yeah.
But for us at the time, it was like, we got everything we needed. And that wasn't only cost. We had to do a web build out. We built the platform, and we did it in such a way where we actually produced our sermons and illustrated them. Mm-hmm. So all of our initial first sermons was like, we're going to put up the green screen. We did, I had a guy, and he was illustrating the sermon. So we would record them, and then he put the background in. We had a moving slide it was like a screen that was digital. We could bring it in and pull it out with graphics, put all kinds of stuff up there, illustrate, narrate, whatever.
Almost like a whole studio. Like you built kind of the studio to do this thing.
We built a studio in my loft, and we would record there. And so every Sunday, what we did was we would play one of those illustrated sermons, and we configured something. It was like the first of its kind. I don't really know anyone else that did this, because we were after actual community, not just a stream.
Right.
So everyone would click a button at the end of the sermon, and they'd pop in a group. And I had trained some moderators. And so the groups would auto-populate, and people would just have folks show up in their group, mm-hmm. and they'd be able to talk about it. And we had, some specific questions, and people would be able to have Bible study and community.
Like right after you're done.
Right after I was done.
Yeah. And that's kind of, I don't know if every church is doing this, but I've definitely heard, who was I talking to? I think I was talking to a pastor out of Atlanta from C3 Church, who was the first one to say it to me. I don't know if he was the first one to come up with it, but in the COVID time, he was like, yeah, after church, we have Zoom rooms. And so we've got moderators that are in, they're all kind of built into Zoom, and you kind of just randomly break everyone out into Zoom rooms, because Zoom supports that like kind of functionality. And so it's made it very easy for anybody to do. And I was like, oh, that's such a great idea. It's the first time I had heard of it. Right. But you were giving that a go back in 2006. So super cool.
Yeah, 2016. And that was before Zoom. So we actually had to engineer with our web designers a way to do this, because there was no like pre-built algorithm that we could find.
Right. Zoom wasn't out there. And so this is going, but how come that didn't end up working?
Crashed and burned.
Yeah. Like what happened? Because it sounds super cool, and you had an audience, and
it was such a cool idea. You even streamed some worship at the beginning. We got everything in place that we needed to do that. And then we played the message. We had this. I thought we had just literally done one of the coolest things ever.
Right.
And it crashed and burned. And I'll tell you why. It was because as a leader, I was not present. I had in this format actually engineered my need to be present out of the equation altogether. So you basically got a video of me, but I wasn't actually involved. And this is the biggest thing that I think was a learning curve, is that there are certain principles that you can never take away. And one of those is genuine leadership and the fathering of an organization or call. You can't take that away. And I did. So that void then left basically our moderators filling in the shoes that I should have been filling in from the front.
Right.
And they weren't anointed or prepared to do that. And so what wound up happening was people would just get the playback on YouTube later on, and they wouldn't actually show up for the live service. And I mean, I think our live attendance went down to about 20 from over 200 when we launched.
Wow.
Which
I mean,
sad.
it's interesting because it kind of makes sense. Like YouTube, you know, the internet is on demand. Like I can go and do it whenever I want. And so if there's not something at a certain time that makes me want to go do it, I'm going to do it when it fits best for me. Like maybe I don't want to get up that early or whatever. I don't know, you know, but like I can just fit it in my day whenever it kind of makes sense for me, because there's no draw to be there then. So that makes a lot of sense that people would just start like, hey, I'm going to go catch the recording.
Yeah. There's not, you know, faithfulness when you are like that digitally anchored is a bit challenging. So there's no accountability at all. And so anyway, fast forward, we had to course correct in 2017 and rethink this. And in the rethinking, we said, okay, we're going to end because we were spending a lot of money doing the production. I mean, it was just and it was not paying off. So I actually moved to Zoom and literally just opened a Zoom room, had a way for people to access it from the website, and we just started preaching on Zoom. But with this model, that actually allowed for was interaction with me and others in the community in church context.
Right.
As soon as we made that shift, believe it or not, it began to grow and do much better for everyone without all of the money, all of the production, all of the illustration. Like I thought that would actually be a good thing. But there's something about actually being there to impart into the moment that seemed to be a difference maker.
Right.
And so that is how we began to grow from that point. We cut all the groups out and then we began to rethink that. Fast forward, we had to change eventually because it grew too much and we just couldn't fit everyone in these Zoom rooms anymore. So now we've moved on from that model. But what we've done for community, and this has been really healthy for our organization, we created an entire Bible Institute at Bride Ministries. And what we began to do is train moderators to play those ministry, like the videos from the Institute, and then hold meetings after that where people are able to discuss those. And this has become our ongoing weekly Bible study meetings. It has been a phenomenal element of our ministry and what we're able to offer. So people are coming to the church, but then independent of that entire experience are the internet groups with our materials. And it has been amazing to watch the kind of transformation it's bringing people. And one of the other things that we added that was super healthy for us is, you know, just borrowing on the wisdom of some of the pastors that I had talked to in the beginning that said this will never work, was actually putting people in face-to-face connection strategically. We realized that actually has to happen on some level at some point.
Right.
And so what we did was we began to do what we call advances, which are basically retreats. And we say, you know, twice a year, we get a place, a hotel. We're now moving into resorts, but we started at basically like campgrounds.
Grassroots, man, just growing it.
And we had people fly in from all over, that were connected to us and felt, a kindred spirit with our ministry.
Right.
And we just literally hung out for 3 days together. This fellowship, worship, teaching, eating meals together. When we began to do that, and this was 2018, that just caused everything to really take off.
Mm-hmm.
And so what happens is you have a hybridization process where you're marrying face-to-face ministry and actual people in fellowship to a digital medium.
Right.
And even with limited face-to-face, it's like, as long as there's a little bit of that, as long as there's a direct connection to the leadership, as long as you are providing some modicum of that aspect, you wind up with being able to lean heavily into technology and see extraordinary fruit.
And I was mentioning to you, as soon as you said that, as we were chatting last week, I was like, man, that's kind of like what Tithely is, right? Like, we're a full remote company, not a church, not the same, but this concept of like, okay, we're all remote. There's 120 of us around the country, and a few in actually Australia, Canada, and a few other places. But once a year, we all get together and just have a big offsite. We'll get together for 3 days. And people who have never met in person, they've only interacted via Zoom online for different meetings and things like that. They get together and it's like they're long lost friends. And it's a big ol' good family reunion where people want to be there. They're having a good time. It's super refreshing and encouraging for everybody to see each other in person. And then we go back and, do another year, and then a year later get back together. And it's a really unique and it's super cool and fascinating to watch, right? When you see, like, the first time we did one, we were like, whoa, this is awesome. Because we're all such good kind of friends virtually. So I can totally see when you start online, in your sense, and then kind of adding that in-person component. I think a lot of churches right now, who have been all digital for months now, are like waiting for that moment. Like, I imagine all these churches that, are the normal traditional church model, in a building, physically together. When people go back, it's going to be like a party, like a celebration, because everyone's been dying to be back in person. But cool how you've, I'm wandering around, but, cool how you've incorporated that element into your stuff while figuring out how to do online really, really well. Let's talk about, I guess, maybe in the last little bit here, how you're taking that hybrid model a little bit further, and even why you're kind of out in Houston. Like, what are you guys thinking about, physical, in the building kind of church?
Absolutely. Well, this is the thing, you asked me, what kind of term would you ascribe to what's happening here? I talked with my wife about it, and she really nailed it. She gave me a term, okay? And it's the digitally resilient church. What that means is that as our world is changing, because it is, the church does not need to become outdated or outmoded. It just means that we are able to transition with the way the world is changing and continue to reach people with the gospel. So we're a digitally resilient church. And for us, that transition, it means you're not just anchoring completely in one direction or completely in the other. It's a balance of both. And as we're transitioning, we're going to be bringing in the digital element, the technology element, in a unique way, even as we begin to back into more traditional models. So we're here in Houston looking at properties. Why? Because we're going to be getting a ministry training center. We're establishing a base of operations for our ministry in Houston. We're going to begin doing weekly meetings like a church would. We're also going to be getting property out here. We're going to be building survivor housing for trauma survivors, and we're going to have a whole program for that and everything else. So we're really setting up a base of operations here for a lot of the expressions our ministry is stepping into. And one of the things that we're doing, because we have such a robust online family in different areas of the world, we're going to be bringing that family into what we're building in the physical, so, or the church model. And so We want to use technology to bring in, even like one of our leaders, Todd, amazing guy, but he lives in Wisconsin and he's not moving to Houston because he has an amazing job. Like his stuff is there. We're going to be importing his teachings and study into our building through technology. We're going to have people gathered in our building that are going to interact with that while he's in Wisconsin. And in today's world, there's no challenge doing that.
Right.
You know, we're going to have meetings on a weekly basis where I'm preaching to a live community of people that are here in Houston, but we're going to keep the online element where I'm taking questions and interacting with people that are watching on YouTube and watching on Facebook Live from the pulpit,
right,
in front of everyone that's there, so that we can maintain a robust interaction with our larger, broader family, while also accommodating those that want that and can be part of that person-to-person interaction. And eventually, you know, we may even expand into satellite hubs and have different houses of worship in different states. Like, I don't know how this is going to grow.
Right.
But we're going after it.
Yeah, you're mixing it up. And I love one of the things you said early on is just this concept of, you know, it didn't work when the personal connection was gone. And that was the big kind of like failure moment, right? And so, you know, and even now, I think a lot of churches are, you know, they're recording services and they're kind of doing what you started doing, like producing, recording everything, and then playing it, premiering it on YouTube or premiering it on Facebook, and that human element. So, like mixing it together, where you've got in the building, but you're also doing it for the online audience and you're trying to keep that personal connection, is so important. I actually think like recording certain elements, but having a live element to your online church service, even now for most churches, right? You guys are unique, but every church that's out there that's doing church online, there's something about having the actual live element versus the whole thing being pre-recorded and just you're just watching it like with your popcorn kind of thing. Like, so I love what you guys are up to. Have you thought about, maybe as a final question, have you thought about how you're going to mix the two? Are you going to have like Zoom going? And so you've got the live audience, that's sort of easy, like people showing up in the building. And are you going to have camera with Zoom and people on Zoom kind of thing? Or how are you thinking about pulling those things together?
Yeah, totally. So, you know, I think that what we're going to be doing, we actually have a church streaming service that we use for the live church. And then we push it out to YouTube and Facebook primarily. We used to have our own little channel, but that was buggy. So we just kind of cut that out. But, you know, we're going to keep Zoom for the weekly Bible studies.
Okay.
Those weekly Bible studies, we're just going to keep expanding moderators that are trained and, you know, good to go, solid people that we could trust,
right,
to host those, so we can keep growing that weekly offering through our ministry, which is equipping people. For the church, yeah, you know, we're probably going to expand to the point that we have a stream, like a live stream with a multiple camera setup. But we'll have someone that's moderating, you know, YouTube chat, Facebook chat, pulling questions off and just sending those right to my tablet where I'm preaching from, so I can see what's popping up. That's kind of being filtered for me, so I don't have to do all the homework. And then I can just respond to that from the pulpit as we are, you know, streaming live in these different directions, so that interaction is really happening.
Yeah. Super cool. I mean, it's a whole new element, taking live questions or just live engagement and kind of talking to the people who are online while you're also talking to the people in the building in a more direct way. Cause you know, when you're streaming, you're obviously talking to everyone, but trying to pull in kind of the comments and the community and the engagement is going to be fun to watch. Well, man, this has been awesome. Thank you a ton for your time today and for sharing with the audience kind of how you guys have been growing, how you think about church. Let me close with one final question. You talked about mindset a little bit kind of back. So in order for a pastor to be great in this kind of online church world, as everyone's kind of learning, tell us a little bit about your mindset with doing things online.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, you got to think about actually being effective. The body of Christ in some cases has majored on the minors. We've focused on doing things in a way that, past generations would have done them at the expense of staying relevant. And that is, I think, part of the mindset is, okay, but is that what's the mind of Christ? Like, there's a mind of Christ for right now, and we've been given that. So I see that God is saying, no, I have a plan for every generation, and it changes. So what does that changing plan look like? And my whole thing about internet ministries, I don't think that it's wise for churches at this point, especially in America. Maybe in other nations it's a little bit different, but in America, where do you reach the younger generation, right? You reach them in their iPhone. Like, that's literally where they are. They live in this little tiny square. Like, it's so if you're not there, they might not see you. And that's being able to reach people through the mediums that they are engaging. Once upon a time, that meant setting up a tent.
Yeah.
Literally in the 1950s, you set up a tent, people are walking by, they're like, why is that big tent there? Maybe I should check it out. Like, that's reaching people through the medium that they're going to engage with. Now, that's an iPhone. That's a tablet. That's their computer. And so you want to be sure that you're making yourself available in these ways. Moreover, if you're able to create community through a medium that people are already engaging, even better. I mean, people have a robust social life on Facebook and
online.
Twitter, and I won't say MySpace anymore, but talk about Instagram. Like, that's where people are living their lives. So we have to go there to reach people, and with an offering that looks like it was intentional.
Right. Yeah. Love that. We're all there, like the boomers, right? Obviously the millennials, like everyone's there, like everyone's online. And churches really need to think about it. COVID's been, devastating in a lot of ways. But I think the positive of this is what I'm hoping for churches is that, this thing forced us all to go online. And I hope every church, every pastor, every leader comes out of it having learned something, right? It doesn't mean we're all going to be pros and we're going to be the best at this. There's always going to be someone better, but hopefully every church learns how to get a little bit better and start doing things online so that they can reach their community of people that are kind of right around them, but they're all on their phones. So love that. Dan, really appreciate you, man. Thanks for joining us today. And where can people go to connect with you?
Yeah, our ministry is at www.bridemovement.com. And from there, you'll be able to find everything else that we're doing.
Love it. Well, guys, thanks for joining us live today. If you watch the recording, definitely make sure you subscribe, click the little bell on YouTube, and we will see everybody next Monday. Have a great week.